Good morning, I'm Kenneth Moten.
And I'm Janae Norman. Here are the top 5 things to know this Tuesday. Number 1, a massive data breach at Capital One Bank has affected 100 million people. Their personal information was compromised after they applied for credit.
A software engineer in Seattle has been arrested, accused of hacking the bank and bragging about it online. Number 2, President Trump is refusing to let up on Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings despite growing allegations of racism.
He unleashed a new attack overnight, claiming billions of dollars pumped into Cummings' district has been stolen or wasted. Meanwhile, as the president slams Baltimore as rat-infested, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner's family-owned company, is facing allegations that the apartment buildings they own in Baltimore are rodent-infested and have been cited for code violations. Maryland senators say they sent letters to the Kushner-owned company about the alleged violations, but never heard back.
You've got the Kushner companies profiting over housing that is run down, that's not properly taken care of. The president may pretend today that he wants to help Baltimore, but he's been obviously trying to drag it down, and Kushner refused to respond to our letter.
The Kushner-owned company said it's proud to own thousands of apartments in the Baltimore area and says it maintains a, quote, high-quality residential experience.
Number 3, 2 mothers have been shot and killed in Chicago. They were working to end the violence on city streets.
They were part of the group Mothers Against Senseless Killings. Police are now searching for suspects. Number 4, a new development in the U.S. women's soccer team, a legal fight for equal pay.
U.S. Soccer says the World Cup champion women's national team has been paid more than the men's team. The federation paid about $34 million in salary and game bonuses to the women compared to $26 million for the men.
A spokeswoman for the women players says the figures are misleading. She also called it a sad attempt to suppress support for the team.
And finally, number 5, the TSA has made some shocking discoveries in checked bags in recent days.
First, a missile launcher was found in a bag at Baltimore Washington International Airport. An active military member said he wanted a souvenir from his time in Kuwait. The launcher was confiscated.
And officers found a grenade at Newark Airport in New York. The discoveries prompted a reminder to travelers. You guys need to hear this. Don't travel with military-grade weapons on flights.
We do need to hear it.
I guess. More to talk about coming your way.
It's Morning America.
All right, let's start with the big story. The deadly shooting rampage at a food festival in California. 3 victims died in the attack. Dozens have been wounded. This morning, we're hearing from some of those survivors as authorities look into the troubling social media rhetoric posted by the gunman. This morning, stories of survival after the mass shooting in California.
The worst possible situation that you could be in.
Nick McFarland says he was at the Gilroy Garlic Festival with friends and family when he spotted the gunman loading his weapon.
So I run into the booth where our family was, and I just say run like 3 or 4 times, and then after the 3rd time, you just hear.
McFarland and his friend Justin Bates were both shot. Doctors told Bates he was grazed by 5 to 7 bullets.
The doctor told me these 2 ones up here that grazed my shoulder, if they were to inch to the right, they would have gone into my lungs and they would have been fatal. I'm a walking miracle right now. I don't know how I'm alive.
Overnight, authorities identified Kayla Salazar as one of the 3 victims who did not survive. Salazar from San Jose was preparing to celebrate her 14th birthday this weekend. The other 2 victims, 6-year-old Stephen Romero and 25-year-old Trevor Irby.
Whenever he called, he'd always say, "I love you, Grandma." And then I'd say, "I love you, Trevor."
The shooting began as the annual Garlic Festival was winding down Sunday. Authorities say the suspect evaded security by cutting through a fence and sneaking onto the festival grounds, then unloading with an assault-style rifle. He was shot and killed in less than 1 minute by police officers.
Despite the fact that they were outgunned with their handguns against a rifle, those 3 officers were able to fatally wound that suspect.
The shooter has been identified as a 19-year-old who lives just miles from Gilroy. Investigators say he bought the gun legally 3 weeks ago in Nevada. The owner of the gun shop released a statement saying the suspect was happy during the purchase, adding, "We sell to people who we think are upstanding citizens to promote safe sports shooting. I pray to God for all the families." Elsewhere, security is now being increased in Chicago, where hundreds of thousands of people will attend the Lollapalooza Music Festival this weekend.
We have over 330 cameras that will be focused on the footprint of Lollapalooza and the perimeter itself.
And authorities are looking into white supremacist messages the gunman posted online and a post criticizing the festival just before the attack, but they say the motive for the shooting remains unclear.
We turn now to the race for 2020. It is debate night, and it could be make or break for some of the struggling presidential hopefuls facing off in the second debate of the Democratic primary.
Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren will share center stage. They'll be among 10 candidates trying to stand out. ABC's Trevor Ault is in Detroit for us, the scene of tonight's debate. And Trevor, you have the surprising results of a new poll.
That's right, Janae. Yeah, we're seeing some fairly significant movement up at the top of the Democratic field. This is from a new Quinnipiac poll. You know, since former Vice President Joe Biden entered this race, he's been the front runner, but in the past month or 2 months, his lead has been significantly shrinking continuously. This new poll seems to erase that. Right now, it shows him with 34% of the support among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents. That's up from 22% a month ago. And then there's a large jump down to second place. Senator Elizabeth Warren, she has 15%. Senator Kamala Harris has fallen down to third place now. She's at 12%, dropping from 20% earlier this month. And then right behind her is Senator Bernie Sanders. He has 11%. After that, it really starts to thin out. Mayor Pete Buttigieg has 6% of support, and everybody else has 2% or less. So that is a lot of movement right before this debate. But all of those candidates, we have 20 of them over the next 2 nights, and that's not even everybody in the field. You would imagine that they're going to have to try to make some noise.
And Trevor, break it down for us. What can we expect to see from these candidates? More fireworks, like when Kamala Harris took on Joe Biden in that first debate?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, because you would say that Senator Kamala Harris certainly got a bump after that first debate where she went directly at the former vice president. But it does also raise the question of what's the sustainability of a moment like that, because right after the debate, she immediately went up to almost being tied with the former vice president. Now that boost has almost washed away entirely. But you also have to wonder whether or not all of these candidates that are at the bottom of the field can continue without their moment. If you don't know who they are, at this point, they kind of have to have their do or die moment, make some noise, and get into the spotlight, or it won't happen at all. But the problem is you have to do it in a way that the voters really appreciate, because Senator Kamala Harris wasn't the only one who went at former Vice President Joe Biden in the first debate. Representative Eric Swalwell also went at him. He said it was time to pass the torch to someone younger, and Representative Swalwell is no longer in the race. So we certainly will see a little bit of sparring, because people have to make a name for themselves, but you might see more of the top tier candidates trying to stay the course. Senator Elizabeth Warren, she has seen a little bit of a steady climb in her poll numbers, and she says this is more about laying out the policies than it is about sparring with other Democrats.
Trevor, incredible how well versed you are in all of this. What are some of the issues that are going to lead the conversation?
Well, you would think, I mean, everybody up on the stage is going to have things to say. Well, first of all, thank you, Janae. That's very kind of you. But you would think everyone up there has things to say against President Trump, but that doesn't necessarily make for interesting debate. If you have 20 people who all say, I don't like the president, that's not going to be a lot of differentiation. The difference that we're seeing most strongly among Democrats is in health care, and we're seeing that on large swaths of the political spectrum just on that Democratic side. Senator Kamala Harris just released her health care plan, which she's referring to as Medicare for all, but it also leaves room for private plans. And she's already getting criticism from both sides. So the campaign chief for Senator Bernie Sanders says you can't call what she's proposing Medicare for all. It doesn't go far enough, whereas the vice president's campaign is saying that it goes too far and it's dismantling the Affordable Care Act. I would imagine you're going to see a lot of splitting hairs in regards to health care and really a few of those other issues, perhaps impeachment also of President Trump, where they're trying to really slice through where the differences in opinion lie in the Democratic Party.
All right, Trevor Ault, well versed. I think you really deserve some dishes, some good food there in Detroit. I'm pretty sure you've got a number of places you're ready to hit up, because you'll need all of that for when we come back to you tomorrow morning right here on This Morning America.
That's right. I'll be fueling up. I grew up like 45 minutes from here, so I know the area well, yeah.
Oh, perfect. All right, well, say hi to the folks for us, Trevor.
I will. They'd be happy to hear from you.
Thanks, Trevor. All right, well, President Trump has granted pardons to 5 more people and commuted the sentences of 2 others.
The 5-man pardon had already served their required prison time for convictions, including theft, fraud, and drug trafficking. The commuted sentences were for a first-time drug offender and a man convicted of Medicaid fraud. President Trump has now pardoned or reduced the sentences of 19 people.
Turning overseas, the assault trial for A$AP Rocky is underway in Sweden this morning.
The rapper was arrested on suspicion of assault along with 2 of his backup performers. TMZ obtained video of the altercation. He says he acted in self-defense and released video taken moments before the fight. The verdict is expected Friday. President Trump is among those who've supported A$AP Rocky and criticized Sweden for detaining the rapper for weeks before the trial.
Dramatic body cam video shows a South Carolina sheriff's deputy shooting a homeowner through his front door. The video contradicts the police report that said the homeowner opened the door and pointed his gun at the deputy. The officer was responding after a panic alarm went off. The homeowner said he grabbed his gun when he woke up to someone at his door at midnight. He's now recovering. That deputy is on paid leave and under investigation.
Now to a remarkable story of survival. A Texas man trapped in the woods for 5 days after his car crashed.
Jose Velasquez doesn't remember the crash late last month, but remembers waking up and being unable to move. He was rescued by searchers who tracked his cell phone, and he had a broken femur, ribs, nose, fractured vertebrae, and a collapsed lung, and he says he survived on rainwater.
I was next to a tree, and there was vines growing around it. I realized that the inside, it looked moist, so I tried peeling the bark off of it and just chewing on the vine just to get some kind of moisture in my mouth.
He's now recuperating at home after being released from the hospital. The 32-year-old still can't believe he survived. He hopes to be walking by January when he gets married. Something smelly stopped a weekend flight from Philly to London.
10 crew members on an American Airlines flight had to be hospitalized after the odor forced an emergency landing in Boston Sunday night. The pilot described it to air traffic control as a, quote, dirty sock smell.
So none of the passengers complained about the smell or said they felt sick. American Airlines says a maintenance team is trying to determine the source of the odor. Well, coming up, would you try a 45-year-old soup?
We're learning about the beef broth that's been brewing for almost half a century. More after this. Welcome back. Now to what could be the largest security breach to ever hit a financial firm.
Capital One has announced that a hacker gained access to the personal information of millions of people applying for credit.
This morning, a woman is charged in the huge data breach as we learn more about the customers affected. This morning, the big bank warning customers of a massive data breach. Capital One says a hacker gained access to more than 100 million applications, exposing credit cards, credit limits, balances, payment history, and contact information. No credit card numbers or logins were released, but about 140,000 Social Security numbers were compromised, as well as about 80,000 bank account numbers. The FBI has arrested a Seattle software engineer in connection with the breach, who authorities say went by the name Erratic on Twitter. Investigators say they tracked down Paige Thompson because she allegedly posted the stolen information to a site using her name and email address, allegedly tweeting the bank, saying, quote, "I've basically strapped myself to a bomb vest," dropping Capital One's documents and admitting it. If convicted, she faces up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine.
She never really said anything to any of us about it.
Thompson's roommate Ashley says she doesn't think Thompson meant to hurt anyone.
Paige just wanted to see if she could. She had no nefarious intentions with the data.
The breach comes just 1 week after the credit rating agency Equifax agreed to a $700 million settlement over a massive data breach back in 2017.
It's not just a breach of security. It's a breach of public trust. We should have confidence that the confidentiality of our information will be maintained.
As for Capital One, it says it will notify customers whose information may have been breached and will offer free credit monitoring and identity protection. Thompson is charged with computer fraud. She's due back in court Thursday.
Well, now to Brazil, where a prison riot has left nearly 60 inmates dead after rival gangs started a fire and took guards hostage. Let's go across the pond to Julia McFarland in the London Bureau for more. Julia, this is a crazy story.
Hey, Janae, that's right. Now, riots in prisons in Brazil is something that happens quite often, but this is quite a staggering death toll for this particular one. At least 57 people dead. Some of them were attacked close range, but a lot of them actually suffocated after a fire was started. Now, what happened? Two rival gangs who have been sort of at loggerheads. It broke out, obviously, into this mass attack. 2 prison guards were held hostage, but they were later released because this was a sort of intra-gang conflict in the prison. Now, a lot of fingers are being pointed at the government because federal prisons are vastly sort of over capacity. This particular prison has an official capacity of 200, but it was housing 309 inmates. The government has said in response that that wasn't the cause of what happened. It says that it wasn't over capacity, but some serious questions for how they deal with these ongoing instances of violence in their prisons.
And back at home there in London, a court case has captured attention involving a royal couple, but it's not the British royal family.
No, exactly. This is a really fascinating look inside the super secretive affairs of the UAE royal family. Now, this is to do with the leader of Dubai. Of course, the UAE has, I think it's around 7 emirates, and Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum is the emir of Dubai. Now, one of his wives, his 6th wife, who is the daughter of the late King Hussein of Jordan, she escaped from the UAE. She turned up in London, reports that she was claiming asylum, she's fearing kidnapping, and that she was petitioning for divorce. Now, what's happening today is a separate court case that has to do with the welfare of the couple's children. She took 2 of her children with her to the UK. It does not appear that the current court case is about divorce or about finances. But this is really extraordinary. This is the 3rd female member of a UAE royal family to have absconded or have tried to escape from the UAE recently, and so it's a very, very interesting, mysterious trend, and of course so much going on behind the scenes, but a fascinating story that's coming out.
Definitely. Soup, you like it? And Julia? And how old is too old
Soup.
for Soup?
Older than me. This one, right? Would you take a sip of this? This is a soup that has been brewing for 45 years in Bangkok, in Thailand. Now, I've taken a look at this, and they say it's apparently not unusual because basically this is the broth of the soup, which has been simmering for decades, generations really, and they use the broth as a base to make all of their soups from. And at the end of the day, most of the meat and vegetables, all that stuff is gone, and it's only really sort of the remains of the broth, which they use to flavor the soups the next day.
It looks tasty. I mean, I think I would take a sip.
Yeah?
I've got an iron stomach.
Oh.
Like that cauldron that it's in.
I tell you what this reminded me of, guys. Do you remember when President Trump went on his state visit to South Korea and they offered him a 360-year-old soy sauce? So,
okay.
If it's good enough for the president,
it probably
maybe
wasn't,
we could give
because
it a try.
President Trump likes
That's
fast
a valid
food.
point, Julia.
He likes fast food, so he probably only took a...
This is not fast food.
Right.
This is slow food.
Barely slow. There's nothing fast about that.
Julia, thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
hey, guys, that's
guys.
our question of the day. Would you try this 45-year-old soup? Tell us in the comments or tweet us at ABC News Live.
Let's check our notifications, starting with a taxi ad going viral to help find a man for Anne.
This is incredible. She is a real estate agent here in New York.
A good one, too.
Yeah, she's good at selling homes, making money, making deals.
Multi-million-dollar home.
But you can't find a man, so Anne took out an ad. I saw this ad in a taxi a couple days ago and thought, what is this? But it stuck with me, a man for Anne.
There you go. And some days you just want to keep hitting the snooze button like this cat. Not today. Turn it off.
Nope. Back to bed.
Nope.
Back to bed. And we're all used to seeing Hollywood hunk Chris Hemsworth looking like this.
Yep, we sure are. And not like this. Whoa.
All right.
In newly released behind-the-scenes footage from our parent company Disney's Avengers Endgame, we're getting our first look at Hemsworth squeezing into a 90-pound fat suit.
Speaking to the Daily Telegraph, Hemsworth joked that he now knows what it feels like to be pregnant. Maybe that's what it feels like, but Chris, that is not what it looks like. Oh,
he doesn't know what it feels like.
I know. I'm just saying. I'll take pregnancy any day.
People that handsome just get to say whatever they want, and they're like, "Oh, Chris."
Yeah, I guess you're right. Finally, Steelers wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster is making good on a promise he made to a fan after autographing his head.
Apparently, he told the fan, "Look, if you get a tattoo of the Steelers logo, I'll give you season tickets."
Real.
Guess what? That man has season tickets this morning.
Bonus question of the day: would you get a tattoo on your head for season tickets?
Well,
what would it take?
I mean, I don't have much real estate on mine for a tattoo, so I probably wouldn't.
So it doesn't go for much.
I wouldn't do it because there's not much.
Yeah.
Not much room.
And I wouldn't do it because mom ain't raised no fool. Coming up, the high cost of those perfect pictures snapped for the gram.
How some of our nation's most scenic spots are increasingly paying the price after this.
Here's what to watch out for today. Democratic candidates for president will take the stage tonight in the second round of debates in Detroit. 20 candidates will spar over 2 nights, and host CNN has pledged not to ask questions that require a show of hands or one-word answers. President Trump, meanwhile, travels to Jamestown, Virginia today to speak at the 400th anniversary of the first representative legislative assembly held on July 30th. 1619.
Acting Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner Mark Morgan will testify to the Senate Homeland Security Committee on improving conditions at the southern border. And Senate Democrats are set to introduce a bill that would amend the Constitution to overturn the Citizens United ruling to get big money out of politics. Plus, don't forget to tune into the debrief for an update on all our top stories in the briefing room for a breakdown of the latest headlines in politics.
So how much is enough these days when it comes to trying to get that perfect photograph?
In the world of selfies, a growing number of the nation's most beautiful places are becoming increasingly overrun, trampled, and even destroyed in the pursuit of that perfect post. Here's ABC's Maggie Ruley.
They're some of the most awe-inspiring natural wonders in the country.
Oh, wow. Oh, man, look at that.
Horseshoe Bend, the Grand Canyon, Zion National Park, and the Wave. It's a social media goldmine, but for some locations, Insta popularity proving to be too much of a good thing.
Social media has focused so much attention on particular places that they really are at risk of being loved to death.
With throngs of visitors causing irreparable damage during the recent California poppy blooms and at Joshua Tree National Park, some of our public lands are now threatened by overcrowding. We set out to see how these national treasures are dealing with crowds being driven in part by social media. Horseshoe Bend was once a little-known spot in Arizona where locals would hang out to catch the sunset. But almost overnight, an overlook that once saw 4,000 visitors a year began seeing 2.2 million visitors a year. That's over 4,000 visitors a day.
2015 was when it really exploded.
That's also when we saw this huge rise in social media, especially Instagram.
I think it's a huge contributor. We provided the railing so people can take that safe selfie.
That new railing, a part of a larger effort to manage the explosion in crowds, which were causing trash buildup and safety concerns.
We're about to enter the lottery to see if we get to hike the Wave, but we were told that we probably have a better chance of winning Mega Millions.
Every year, more than 150,000 people apply to visit the Wave, a rock formation on the Arizona-Utah border. But just under 10,000 are selected. With only 20 visitors per day, the Wave is one of the most restricted public lands in the U.S. Taylor McKinnon from the Center of Biological Diversity worries that the feature is already endangered at current use levels.
It's an American right to enjoy public lands, but it's also our obligation to ensure that we're not ruining these places, these very fine, delicate sandstone structures. Even under the current use levels, we're seeing impacts that the BLM never anticipated.
Our chance to further explore this delicate ecosystem rests in this bingo cage.
All right, the first lucky person is number 10. Do you want it? Do you want it? It's number 11.
4 a.m. wake-up call. We are up and ready, heading to hike the Wave.
We set out just as the sun was rising over the desert. with Corey Unsworth, who's been leading tours to the Wave for 5 years.
We are currently in Utah, headed towards the Wave.
And when we finally arrived,
This is the first thing they see.
it did not disappoint.
Is it everything you thought it was going to be?
Gorgeous.
For Corey, it's all about striking that delicate balance between nature and those who are seeking to bask in all of its glory.
This is one of those spots you don't yet have that overcrowding sensation, and so it's nice that we still have a few places around that we can go and still have a unique experience on our own.
For Nightline, I'm Maggie Rulli on the Arizona-Utah border.
Oh, definitely have to strike that balance there when it comes to taking those pictures. We want to enjoy the national treasures, but yeah, definitely.
That's it from us today.
Have a great day. We will see you tomorrow.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.